Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Orchards, Washington, Sunday, December 3rd, 2023, 1 o'clock p.m. The Orchards section of Vancouver, Washington has a population of about 26,000 people. Residents describe their neighborhood as quiet, but on this day, it wouldn't be. At 1:06 p.m., sheriff's deputies arrived at 11505 Northeast 92nd Street in response to a call from a person claiming to be a relative of the folks who owned the home there. According to this caller, he had received a frightening text message from a man at the house saying that he had harmed people there. Later, neighbors would say they heard screaming from inside the house and then gunshots. This unnamed person didn't see the text until 4 hours after it had been sent. He had tried to reach the family, but when no one answered, he called the sheriff's department. Due to the threat of a firearm, the Washington Regional SWAT team responded. They used a loudspeaker to try to get anyone inside the home to come out, but nobody answered. Neighbors say the police used flash bombs, smoke bombs, and broke the windows. They used a drone to look inside the house. They saw people who appeared to be dead. They entered the home using a battering ram. They were followed by emergency medical personnel, but it was already too late. There were 5 people dead inside the house. No survivors. The shooter would later be identified as 64-year-old Stuart Rouse. His victims were his wife, Christina Rouse, age 63, along with their 2 adult children, Christina and Melissa, and Stuart's brother, Ronald. Stuart had another son, though, named Christopher, who was not there that day. Christopher would tell the white media that his father was a very patriotic man, a 20-year Marine veteran who suffered from undiagnosed PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Christopher also claimed his father struggled with mental health as well, that everyone had tried to get him help, but he refused and tried to handle it himself. And this isn't the first time something like this has happened in Clark County. In 2011, a man set fire to his East Vancouver house, killing 5 of his children and himself. These incidents get buried by the white media because they don't fit the narrative. The white media buries incidents like this. That's why you don't hear about it. But you should. And although the white media was successfully able to compartmentalize this slaughter, later that same week there would be another mass murder in the western U.S. that they couldn't cover up. Las Vegas, Nevada, Wednesday, December 6th. Only 3 days after the Orchard, Washington slaughter, a 67-year-old man who was identified as Anthony Polito carried out a mass murder at the University of Nevada's Las Vegas campus. The murder spree began around 11:45 a.m. at the university's Lee Business School building. When the shots rang out, students and professors hid in their classrooms. Polito murdered 3 people and wounded a 4th in a roughly 10-minute-long rampage. When Polito left the business school building, he was confronted by police outside. The police, of course, didn't immediately open fire on sight. They instead, as usual, waited to see what he would do. And when he fired on them, only then did they return fire, killing the suspect. He had brought 11 magazines of ammunition with him, and police found 9 of those magazines on him after he was killed. SWAT searched his apartment, and they found an eviction notice taped to the front door. Inside, they found a document which they described as being similar to a last will and testament. Neighbors of Polito said that he dressed well, but that he was quiet and very aloof. One neighbor said that she would sometimes see him sitting in his car alone when she and her boyfriend went to the gym at 3:30 in the morning. Polito had been a business professor who taught at Roseman University of Health Sciences, but he left when the school discontinued the business administration program that he had been teaching. Police said that he had been applying for several jobs at various colleges and universities, but he was denied the job every time. Police also said he had a list of people that he had wanted to kill, and that he had also sent almost 24 letters to people across the United States. One of the letters reportedly had a white powdery substance in it, which was later identified as talcum powder. Though none of his victims were on his list, however, included faculty at East Carolina University in North Carolina. He had been a professor at that school, too, for nearly 16 years. Now, why this guy was having such a hard time finding work, I'm not sure, but maybe it had something to do with the fact that he published rantings on his own personal website where he spouted off about being a member of Mensa, and he also expressed conspiracy theories about the Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 that went missing in 2014, and he also claimed that he was the first person to solve the Zodiac Killer's cryptography. He apparently also liked a number of right-wing nut commentators too. I'm simply shocked to hear that. A former East Carolina student of his said that Polito would obsess over the reviews that he would receive from his students at the end of every semester. The reviews were anonymous, but even so, the student said Polito told him that he remembered the faces of the students who gave him bad reviews, and that he knew who they were and where they sat in class. Now keep in mind that many employers, when they're considering job applicants, especially high-profile ones like universities, they often will check online to see what your social media presence is, or what information they can find out about you on the internet. Since Polito was an academic, it's only natural that a university's human resources department would want to check out his references first and ask what kind of reputation he had had at his former schools. And that being the case, this is the kind of screwball stuff that they would have found out about him. His life was clearly in a downward spiral, and as he saw it, he was being rejected by the world. So he wanted to give the middle finger, and since it was these schools that denied him what he wanted, he would take his rage out on them. Now, unlike the massacre that had taken place just a few days earlier, this mass shooting actually was reported on by the white media widely simply because it was a school shooting. It's not like they could ignore it. But the bigger mass shooting that took place only 3 days before it was totally ignored. This is part of why I do these crime reports, to remind you just how many of these incidents are taking place every day that you don't hear about. So what does this tell us about the mass murders that happen in the U.S.? Do the authorities really want to solve this problem if they won't even admit to it? Or is there perhaps another motivation at work here, some underlying principle that they're trying to protect, one that won't let them do what they know has to be done? When your main goal is to not encroach on the movements and activities of the dominant society, then when they go and commit mass murder after mass murder, the so-called authorities will find themselves in a dilemma. Social restrictions on people's movements and activities are supposed to be only for black people. That way, even the poorest non-black person can feel that they have some kind of higher status than black people, because at least they can walk the streets or go about day-to-day activities without being harassed, arrested, or killed simply because. Knowing you are allowed to move freely about the society while a select other group cannot, these are part of the psychic benefits that go along with being classified as white. It's part of how white power takes a fiction that black people are different based on color and makes it into black people's reality. But even having back-to-back slaughters won't change this, because the dominant society has already worked it into their mental calculus that the occasional, or rather frequent, mass murder is simply the price that has to be paid to maintain the system of goodies, giveaways, and guarantees that are the glue holding together the support for white supremacy for those who depend on it. America doesn't have a gun control problem, it has a racial privilege control problem. In the meanwhile, they've made up their minds to simply sit back and watch as more of these rural and small-town homes become slaughterhouses, and as the schools and universities will continue to have escape and evade as part of their classroom curriculum. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: D. Tubman, Cedric Etheridge, Wally Belisle, Kenneth White, and Nathan Gunter. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.